Good afternoon, guys. Finished my little gun projects for the day. Been laying a little carbon fiber, so I wanted to talk about airplanes a little bit. I've had several conversations going on, part of them online on some of the lists, and some through private emails that have kind of either wanted clarification or questioned what I'd said on the list. So rather than being just posting something on a forum and have people thinking I'm an asshole, at least you can look me in the face and realize what asshole you're talking to, type of thing. So several things I wanted to talk about, and a lot of this stuff pertains to what's been on the Zenith list here lately. And I guess we'll go back. I am working on my 701 a little bit. I'm slowly getting back into it since I've been working some carbon fiber here. I've been working on some patterns and molds a little bit for some of the carbon fiber parts that I'm going to put on my 701. And that kind of brings up, I've had a couple of guys say, well, you're doing quite a few modifications to your 701. The reality is I'm not. You know, I am doing a few things, but I'm not doing anything that I consider to be any structural changes because, as I've said before, Zenith knows more than I do. And Zenith actually knows more than all of us do. So they've been doing this long enough to where they're putting out a good product, and we know that I'm a supporter of Zenith. So I'm not doing anything that I consider to be structural changes. I redid my flap handle, and I did a video series on that. If you guys have followed me, you've seen that. And that is something that I don't really consider to be structural. It mounted in the same positions that the original mounting went into. There are some changes there in the way they activate and things like that, but nonetheless, I'm not going into uncharted territory there. There's been conversions of that done before, and Zenith offers theirs. And the reality of that is, if Zenith would have been willing to sell me the drawings for that, I would have used their drawings rather than developing my own type of thing, because I don't think mine is very far off from what they're using. And anyway, that's neither here nor there, but that's not really a change. I'm doing a lot of carbon fiber stuff, wingtips and things like that. And I'm doing that just for my own learning experience and because I can. And there's nothing that's being changed structurally that's going to affect the flight of that aircraft. A few other things I'll do. I'm going to put some fences on my horizontal stabilizer, a la John Austin, who's on the Zenith list. And I think he's got a good idea there that I'm going to utilize. And I'm going to build mine out of carbon fiber and hang them on there. And that's something that if it doesn't work the way I want it to, those can always come off. There again, nothing major changing there. Mounting seat belts, John's also run a horizontal bar across the top of the fuselage, right just back of the pilots, to give better angles and I think a little bit better support for seat belts. And I'm going to do a modification very similar to that in the 701. I think that's a good idea. It's, you know, not a major thing, but I'm going to do that. Otherwise, my plane is pretty much stock as far as I know. I'm going to blow my own bubble doors. You know, the patterns are built for that. I need to get around and do those, and everything as time permits. But anyway, things I wanted to talk about. We've been discussing rivets and machining rivet heads. I did a video on machining rivet heads way back when, early on, terrible video, and I'll probably redo one here in the very near future just to kind of update it. All of the information still good on there about machining your own rivet heads. I think that's something everybody needs to do, because you're going to want more than one rivet or one set of rivet heads. You know, I've got two of the Nico pneumatic riveters that I like. I've machined heads for those, and I've got, I think, 2 or 3 hand riveters that we've machined heads for. Zenith will do that, and you can buy a riveter, you know, either air or hand riveter from Zenith, but they're not that hard to machine, but you do have to have those machined heads. Now, the question came up about dimpling skins and countersinking underneath it. That's not something I'm comfortable with doing. It's my understanding that those rivets the heads are machined that way so that it domes that countersunk rivet back down over. The outer edge gives you usually will squeeze your skins together a little bit better, and gives you a little bit better surface to seal underneath there and a little more strength. So leaving those in their countersunk condition and just using a flat nose to rivet them, I don't I'm not comfortable using that. You know, I think we're changing the engineering on that, and very few of us are qualified to do that. The thing about home building, we can do whatever we want, but it's not something I'm comfortable doing. Zenith planes are low cost, relatively easy to build, and fairly easy construction is the big draw for Zenith. I've looked at several other different airplane constructions. Usually they're more involved or more complicated or have more machine parts or something that way. So we need to keep in perspective what a Zenith airplane is, no matter which one in the Zenith family that we've chosen to build or what we're doing. They're all going to be a relatively low-cost aircraft in the home-built market. So I don't see any real sense in making them more complex by trying to re-engineer them or redesign them or do anything major with them. I'm more of a builder than I am a pilot, probably, and probably always will be. I love to build. You know, if you followed me at all, you know I've got crap everywhere and all kinds of projects going on at once. I like to build stuff, and I really enjoy the airplane building. Once the 701's done, there's plans for at least one more airplane, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But I've used the 701 to learn as I've gone along, and it's served me well there. So, you know, I'm going to continue. I'll get mine finished here eventually. It's taken way too long, but there again, life gets in the way. So I don't see any sense in trying to overcomplicate the airplane by changing the design parameters of it or doing something else. You know, some guys are building 640s, and a real good friend of mine that I've basically met on the internet through airplane building, who I've got to harass him a little bit because I haven't seen anything. I haven't seen him put out any videos here lately to show he's making any progress since he's got another plane to fly. So I'm going to have to get after him a little bit and get him back to building. But there's been a lot of talk about the 640, and everybody's free to build whatever they want for aircraft. I mean, that's the great thing about experimental aviation and these planes. I think the big draw towards the 640 is because it's a four-place low wing. It's not a plane that I would choose. I'm not a great fan of the 640. I think it has several limitations for the home-built market. I think now it's not as inexpensive as it could be for building what you've got. You know, I was just looking around the other day, and I see that the airframe kit is almost $30,000 now, and that's just for your airplane. Now, if you're scratch building, yes, you can build it cheaper than that, but you're still going to have a bigger engine. You're going to have all the avionics to go in it, and everything else that you're going to put into a airplane. And to me, that's kind of a dated airplane. I have nothing against it. You know, like I say, I'm a fan of Zenith, and I think it's a design they put out. The advantage is it can be scratch built, but I personally would not spend my time building what I consider to be kind of a outdated plane. There's going to be, I don't know what kind of support Zenith's offering for those. You know, they're still obviously offering the kit, although I don't know what the lead time is or anything else. So it can be done, but I just kind of question spending that much money. So I think the money could be better invested in other aircraft. The money and time could be better spent. So anyway, that's all I'll say about that. It's just one of those discussions that's going on. Fuel systems. I saw a picture of and a question about fuel systems. Now, Zenith still supplies the brass barbed fittings with basically a pipe thread on the other end that threads into your fuel tank and your gascolator and that type of thing. I personally am going to use AN fittings. I don't care for the barbed fittings. It's a failure point as far as I'm concerned. But it's one of the things Zenith still supplies. You know, it's safe, it works, it's along the same lines of that low-cost aircraft. So that's all well and fine, but what I saw was a question about how tight to tighten the fittings into the fuel tank. And that's a valid question, but there was also, it was a reducer that was being put into the fuel tank, and then the barbed fitting was being threaded into that reducer. I'm hoping his friends have popped up and said, you know, don't do that. If you're going to use a barbed fitting, just get the proper size barb fitting with the proper size thread to go directly in, because you don't really want a extra potential leak point or failure point right there just because you had to use a reducer. You know, you can buy a barb fitting with the proper thread on it. So anyway, I hope somebody said something about that. And I'm saying these things, I know it sounds like I'm being critical, and I'm really not. It's just information that I hope somebody can glean something from and make their build a little more successful or a little safer when they're done. So, and I don't know anything. You know, I'm just some dumbass here that thinks he can build an airplane in his little shop. So take what I say for what it's worth, and, you know, you get what you pay for, and you didn't pay a whole lot for this other than a little bit of your time. So anyway, that was my little thing about fuel systems. So anyway, hopefully we're all getting back to building. I know the people that have been to Oshkosh every year, everybody's excited when they get back, and there's new builders starting in. 701 questions. The only place that I really remember any amount of extrusion angle being used on the 701 is in the forward cabin area. And if I recall, you use about, I think it's about 35 feet, 33 feet, something like that. I ended up and bought 2 sticks when I purchased that extrusion. There may be some other little pieces of aluminum angle extrusion, but they're, you know, 1 by 1 or 1.5 inches by some. I don't really remember, but it's a minimum amount. Everything else that shows as angle on the 701, as near as I can remember, is going to be formed. If it's kit supplied, it's obviously going to be in the kit. If you're scratch building, it's angle that you're going to have to bend. Whether it's the longerons, which are, I think they're 40 thousandths, and you need 4 of those, I believe, 8 foot long, something like that. The main thing you're going to use is aluminum L angle, and it's out of 25 thousandths, 6061. The question the other day was they were showing 20 millimeters by 20 millimeters on an L angle. And my plans, I think if that's what the builder was talking about, and it was a new builder, my plans show 19 millimeter by 19 millimeter. I think it was probably changed to 20, give it a little more beef or easier to manufacture or whatever the case may be from Zenith. But anyway, that's 25 thousandths. I think my plans show a total of 38 4-foot pieces of it, which is, you know, a 4 by 12 sheet sheared crossways 4-foot length. And I think it shows 38 of those. Developed length, I believe, was 36, was what the developed length was. But anyway, those are all formed pieces of aluminum. So it's not an extrusion. So anyway, materials on the 701, 6061 T6. Any extruded angle you're going to have to, any of your standard steel suppliers are going to, or metal suppliers, are going to have 6061 T6. You can't get those from your big box store. If it's got a sharp corner on the inside of that L, why it's 4053 or 4350 something. It's a inferior product for our application. It's a what they call an architectural angle, whereas we're using a 6061 as a structural angle. Rivets, back to rivets. AVEX, A4s, and A5s are aluminum rivets. Someone also stated or commented that they should be stronger than a bucked aluminum rivet or a squeezed rivet because they had a steel stem. I posted back the specifications on those, and that doesn't work out to be true, since Abdelda's or AVEX is not considered to be a structural rivet. The steel stem is not figured into the shear strength of it. Zenith calls out, and all this information is either on the plans or in the construction standards from Zenith, or it's, you know, the information's out there. You have to look for it. So I spend a tremendous amount of time reading plans and reading construction standards and things like that. But anyway, a AVEX rivet, Zenith calls out the specifications in shear as 130 and I believe 220 psi for A4 and A5. That's in shear, and they don't show in tension. I believe, and there again I could be wrong on this, is that when the rivet is domed, you're going to have a little bit more strength in tension, just because I think you've spread that out over a little more area than you will on a countersunk, using that in a countersunk application. So I think you gain a little bit there. Could be wrong. If somebody knows more than I do, leave them in the comment section for me below. but that's my understanding of it, and that's what I was told early on when I originally started my build however many years ago, and nobody's come up with anything that's told me any different or a good argument saying that that's not correct. So I still, as far as I know, that's the way it's figured. Anyway, the Zenith calls 130 and 220. I don't remember what the A5s are. When I looked up from my supplier from them, why they show 150 psi in shear. Now when you look at Zenith's construction standards, they show that 130 and 220 psi in shear with the stem removed. So that just tells me that they're not considering that, or they're going along the same lines that it's not a structural rivet. So it's being figured without that stem. So you probably do have some extra strength by having that steel stem, but you, in my mind, you can't really consider that into shear strength if it's not considered structural. So anyway, there's my 2 cents worth there. Anyway, my supplier showed AVEX as the A4s or 1/8 inch rivets at 150 ultimate shear. Anyway, they show a little bit higher than what Zenith is showing in the construction standards here. So, you know, close enough, it's not going to make any difference. A standard all aluminum rivet, bucked rivet, they show it in, or Zenith construction standards show it in kilograms, and they show 100 and something. Let me look here. They show it at 160 kilograms. When you do the conversion, why it works out to be 350 pounds. And that's nominal shear that they're showing there. So hopefully I haven't muddled that up too bad by having to go back to the book and remember what I think I told you, what lie I told you before. So anyway, the all aluminum rivets are going to be stronger. So Zenith followed along that AVEX rivet, the A4s and the A5s are relatively inexpensive. They put enough of them in there that they meet the standards they need to make sure your airplane all holds together, and they can be done by one person for the most part. So when you get into a solid aluminum rivet that you're going to have to buck or squeeze, part of the time you're going to have somebody to help you do it, because you're not going to be able to reach everything, and it's just more of a pain in the butt. So easy and low cost is what Zenith has done with their aircraft. Heard a little bit of complaining here lately because the price on Zenith airplanes had gone up. Guess what? That's caused by us, the buyer. We wanted match drilled holes. We wanted everything pre-drilled and with all the extra stuff that we wanted and we requested from Zenith, why they've accommodated us, plus just general costs have gone up all the way around, but we're paying for that. So anyway, those are my rants for the day. Hopefully you found something a little bit interesting, and hopefully I haven't offended anybody. Not been my intention today. I'd like to see everybody be able to finish their projects and keep moving forward. So the more complicated you make it by wanting to change the design parameters, why the longer it's going to take you and the more likely it's not going to be a finished project. So anyway, hopefully you found something useful there. If you did, you might want to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you hit the bell notification, you'll know when I put out a new video. And as always, thanks for taking the time to watch.